So picture this. You're hanging a picture on the wall, right?
Okay.
And you just completely, absolutely smash your thumb with the hammer.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, worst feeling.
Right. It hurts so much. And in that moment, if you yell out a very specific, highly taboo four-letter word, your body actually, oh, well, it physically does something wild.
It really does. It's fascinating.
It actually releases a measurable surge of biological painkillers right into your bloodstream. Like your heart rate elevates, your pain tolerance spikes, and you literally endure the physical injury better.
Right. It's a genuine physiological response.
But, and this is the crazy part, if you yell the word table or, ouch, or even like a polite clinical medical term for a bodily function.
Nothing happens.
Absolutely nothing happens. You just stand there in agony holding your thumb.
Exactly. You're just in pain.
So today, we are taking a deep dive into this absolute paradox. We are talking about swear words.
Yes. The forbidden vocabulary.
It's just such a linguistic landscape that defies all logical sense. And to understand it, we're pulling together this massive stack of research today. We've got functional MRI studies on language processing. We're looking at these landmark behavioral experiments from Keele University.
Those are incredible, by the way.
So good. And we're cross-referencing those neurological findings with historical linguistics.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to, like, the Norman Conquest in 1066.
A very busy year for the English language.
Right. Plus, we're layering in some anthropological papers on global profanity traditions. Basically, our mission for this deep dive is to figure out not just what we say when we're mad, but, why these specific sounds have so much power.
It really is a fascinating cross-section of disciplines because, when we examine language strictly as a physical phenomenon, we have to acknowledge that it's really just mechanics.
Just air and vibration.
Exactly. Words are just acoustic vibrations. Air leaving the lungs, hitting the vocal cords, and being shaped by your lips, your teeth, your tongue.
Yeah.
From a purely scientific standpoint, those sound waves are completely neutral. There's nothing inherently magical or dangerous about the physics of human speech.
Let's actually illustrate that neutral reality, because I love this comparison. Take the word fork.
The eating utensil.
Right, the eating utensil. If I say the word fork, it's just a burst of air. You get that fricative F sound at the front, right?
Right.
Then an or vowel shape and a hard K consonant at the end, fork.
Yep.
You hear it, your brain registers, a metal or plastic object that you use to eat a salad, and we move on.
Nobody panics.
Exactly. Nobody blinks. You don't have parents covering their children's ears in the middle of a restaurant. Human resources isn't going to call you into a disciplinary meeting for saying fork.
Yet if you take those exact same acoustic properties, that exact same F sound, a very, very slightly altered vowel shape in the middle, and that exact same hard K sound at the end.
Suddenly it's not neutral anymore.
Right. Suddenly that acoustic vibration transforms into a social bomb.
It really does. You drop that other word in the wrong environment, and you can literally lose your job.
Or start a bar fight.
Yeah. You can completely derail a formal presentation. And the paradox here is that the power of a swear word, clearly it doesn't live in the alphabet.
No, not at all.
It doesn't live in the phonetic structure because the sounds are neutral, which means the power is 100% constructed by us.
And that constructed reality is the foundational concept we really have to establish before we even look at the neuroscience.
Right.
A swear word is never just a definition that you find in a dictionary. It is a word that has been imbued with a culturally constructed emotional payload.
Emotional payload, I like that phrase.
Yeah, because over centuries, a society just collectively decides that certain concepts, whether they're bodily functions or religious entities or social identities, are transgressive, they're shameful, or dangerously powerful.
And so the words just absorb that danger.
Exactly. The words attached to those concepts soak up that cultural danger. So the power is entirely social. It's derived purely from human agreement.
Which makes the whole thumb-smashing painkiller effect completely counterintuitive.
It really does.
Like, we invented the rules of polite society, right?
Yeah.
But our biology treats those totally arbitrary societal rules like they are physical laws of nature.
Like gravity.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, we are inviting you to sort of step back and examine your own vocabulary today like an anthropologist would. We need to figure out how a purely social construct managed to hack its way into our actual biology.
And the neurological research on this is just staggering because it reveals that swear words occupy entirely different real estate in the human brain compared to normal vocabulary.
Okay, break that down for us. Where does normal language live?
So typically, language processing for the vast majority of people is dominant in the left hemisphere of the brain.
Okay.
You have structures like Broca's area and Wernicke's area, and they handle all the heavy lifting of speech. So if you're describing the architecture of a building, or you're asking for street directions, or explaining a math problem,
Doing the logical stuff.
right, your left hemisphere is analyzing the grammar, it's retrieving the vocabulary, and it's structuring the sentence logically.
So it's kind of like the structured analytical filing cabinet of the brain.
That's a perfect analogy, yes.
But if I drop a heavy box on my foot and I shout an obscenity, you're saying that word isn't coming from that left hemisphere filing cabinet.
It is bypassing that filing cabinet entirely.
Wow.
Yeah. Swear words appear to hijack the right hemisphere, specifically regions that are deeply integrated with the limbic system.
And the limbic system handles emotion, right?
Emotion, tone, and autonomic responses. So swear words completely bypass the normal linguistic filters and grammatical processing centers.
That's
The
wild.
brain doesn't even treat a shouted profanity as a piece of structured language. It treats it almost like an emotional event.
Like what? Like a laugh?
Yes, like a laugh or a cry of pain or a gasp of terror. It's an event, not a sentence.
Wait, hold on. If the brain treats it like an emotional event rather than a word, does that mean someone...
Right. If they get frustrated by their inability to communicate, or if they experience sudden physical pain, they can effortlessly produce a perfectly articulated, highly profane expletive.
Because they aren't looking in the broken filing cabinet.
Exactly. They aren't retrieving that word from the damaged left hemisphere. They're pulling it directly from the intact right hemisphere emotional center.
That completely reframes what a word even is. Like, it suggests the swear word is stored alongside our survival instincts, not alongside our vocabulary list.
That's a very accurate way to look at it.
Let's push on this distinction a bit. Let's compare how the brain handles two terms that mean the exact same physical thing, but carry totally different social weights.
Okay, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, let's take the clinical term for human waste, fecal matter.
Very polite.
Very polite, versus the everyday, four-letter Anglo-Saxon swear word for it. Now, if I say fecal matter, what is my brain doing, and how does that physically change when I use the swear word instead?
This is where functional neuroimaging is so helpful, because it allows us to actually observe what researchers call the amygdala hijack.
The amygdala, that's the almond-shaped part, right?
Yeah, it's an almond-shaped cluster of nuclei located deep within the temporal lobes, and it's fundamentally the brain's threat and emotion detection center,
Like the alarm system.
the ancient alarm system. It lights up when you see a predator in the brush or when you experience sudden acute fear. Now, when you hear or read the phrase fecal matter, your brain processes that purely as informational data.
Just normal data.
Right. The left hemisphere decodes the vocabulary, retrieves the clinical definition, and you comprehend the concept. And during this entire process, the amygdala stays completely quiet.
Because there's no threat.
There's no emotional threat detected in the clinical phrase.
But if someone shouts the four-letter equivalent in a quiet room?
The imaging changes drastically. Hearing or saying that specific taboo word causes the amygdala to light up. It literally activates the brain's threat and emotion center. Think about that. The literal physical meaning of the two terms is absolutely identical. They describe the exact same biological material.
But your brain processes one as data and the other as a physical, threatening event.
Yes, a physical event.
A sound that society only decided was inappropriate relatively recently in the grand scheme of human evolution can trigger a literal ancient survival mechanism.
It's remarkable.
So if this is hardwired into the architecture of the brain, what happens when there's a neurological condition where that specific architecture misfires?
You're referring to Tourette's syndrome.
Yeah.
Which provides another crucial piece of evidence that profanity operates on an isolated neurological pathway.
Right.
So many people have a basic familiarity with Tourette's syndrome. It's a neurological disorder characterized by repetitive, involuntary movements and vocalizations known as prubix.
Right. And usually those vocal tics are what? Clearing the throat.
Clearing the throat, clicking the tongue, or just repeating neutral words or phrases.
But in a specific subset of patients, the tics are entirely profane.
Yes, that specific symptom is called coprolalia. And coprolalia is the involuntary, uncontrollable utterance of obscene, taboo, or socially inappropriate words.
And we should clarify, they aren't doing it on purpose.
No, it's vital to understand that the patient does not want to say these words.
Mm.
They aren't angry at the people around them. They aren't intentionally swearing to express frustration. The brain's regulatory mechanisms, which likely involve the basal ganglia, are simply misfiring.
They're just releasing these vocalizations without conscious consent.
Exactly.
But wait, this is what I don't get. If it's just a random neurological misfire,
Yeah.
why wouldn't the brain just spit out random nouns?
Right.
Like, why isn't a patient involuntarily yelling refrigerator or cloud? Why is the misfire specifically accessing the taboo words?
And that right there is the crucial insight. The very existence of coprolalia proves that the brain cannot randomly misfire and produce only swear words unless those swear words were already physically grouped together in a separate, distinct neural pathway to begin with.
Oh, because if they were mixed in with everything else...
If all words were stored equally in the left hemisphere, a misfire would just produce a random assortment of dictionary terms. Refrigerator, cloud, fork.
Right.
The fact that the misfire specifically isolates obscenities proves that taboo language has acquired a completely distinct, segregated neurological status.
They live in the emotion center, they trigger the threat alarm in the amygdala, and they bypass the normal and group centers entirely.
That's the summary, yes.
Which brings us all the way back to the hammer and the thumb. What does this deep neural architecture actually mean for our physical bodies when we deploy these words in a moment of crisis?
This leads us directly to the Kiel University study conducted by psychologist Richard Stevens.
Oh, this study is so good.
It completely altered our understanding of the physiological utility of profanity. And it's such an elegant, highly reproducible behavioral experiment.
Let's walk the listeners through the methodology because the setup is just brilliant. So imagine you are brought into a laboratory setting. The researchers have prepared this container filled with freezing, circulating ice water. It is painfully, aggressively cold.
Extremely unpleasant.
Right. And the instructions are really simple. You must plunge your bare hand into the ice water and hold it submerged for as long as you can possibly tolerate the pain.
Right.
And they divide the participants into two groups. The first group is instructed to plunge their hand into the water while repeating a neutral, completely harmless word, something descriptive but non-emotional.
Like wood.
Right, wood or table. But the second group plunges their hand into the exact same freezing water, but they are instructed to repeat their favorite, strongest swear word continuously.
Just over and over.
Over and over. So what does the data show?
The data reveals a stark, measurable physiological divergence. The group that utilized the swear word kept their hands submerged in the freezing water, significantly longer than the group repeating the neutral word.
Significantly longer.
Yes. Furthermore, when they were surveyed afterward, the swearing group actually reported a lower subjective perception of pain.
Wow.
Their pain threshold visibly and measurably increased simply by changing the acoustic vibrations leaving their mouths.
It's completely counterintuitive. You would assume the brain wants to conserve energy in a painful situation, but instead it's using specific vocabulary to alter its physical limits.
Oh.
What is the actual biological mechanism making the cold water hurt less?
It traces directly back to that amygdala hijack we discussed earlier.
Okay.
When the participants repeated the taboo word, the societal danger associated with that word triggered the amygdala.
Because it's a bad word.
Right. The amygdala perceives this as an emotional, high-stakes event, which immediately sparks the sympathetic nervous system.
The fight or flight response.
Exactly. This is the body's fight or flight response. And when the sympathetic nervous system activates, it signals the adrenal glands to release a massive surge of adrenaline into the bloodstream.
And adrenaline acts as a painkiller.
Yes. Adrenaline, aside from increasing your heart rate and alertness, has a natural, deeply powerful analgesic effect. It is literally an endogenous biological painkiller designed to help an organism survive a physical attack.
Okay, think about it like an emergency glass break alarm on the wall of a building.
I like this.
The intense burning pain of the ice water is the fire, right? But your normal vocabulary is saying, ouch, or this is really cold, or wood that doesn't break the glass.
No, the brain views that as normal data processing.
But swearing. Swearing is taking a physical hammer, smashing the emergency glass, and pulling the alarm. The taboo nature of the word actually tricks the brain into initiating a survival protocol.
Yes.
It's literally pumping your body full of biological painkillers so you can endure the perceived threat.
The analogy holds up neurologically perfectly. The emotional intensity of the taboo word forces open a physiological pain reduction pathway that normal language simply cannot access.
But wait, If it's essentially a biological superpower, which it sounds like it is, why aren't we just swearing constantly to reduce the minor pains of daily life?
Like,
Ah.
why not just swear your way through a grueling workout or, a tedious commute?
Because there is a severe cost of habituation. Stevens' research included a very vital caveat. They discovered that this analgesic effect, this biological superpower, is drastically weakened or completely non-existent in individuals who habitually swear in their daily lives.
Oh, so the power relies entirely on the shock value.
Precisely. The power of a swear word is entirely dependent on its taboo status, on its ability to shock your own amygdala.
That makes sense.
If you casually use the strongest expletives every other sentence while you're buying groceries or chatting with friends or watching television, your amygdala adapts.
It gets used to it.
It stops perceiving those words as threatening emotional events. Through sheer repetition, they become normalized. They lose their emotional payload and revert to being just like the word fork.
So the alarm system gets disconnected.
Yes. And when you finally do plunge your hand into the ice water or stub your toe on a bed frame and you yell that swear word, your brain does not react.
There's no amygdala activation, no sympathetic nervous system response, no adrenaline dump, and absolutely no pain relief. The neurological power vanishes right alongside the societal taboo.
So if you want to keep your emergency painkiller powers active, you actually have to maintain a relatively polite vocabulary in your day-to-day life.
Exactly. You have to preserve the shock value for when you actually need it.
Which raises a massive historical puzzle for me. If our biology is reacting so violently to the taboo, how did the English language decide which specific words were the taboo ones?
This is a great question.
Because we established earlier that fecal matter is safe and the
Yeah.
four-letter Anglo-Saxon equivalent is dangerous. Who made that rule? Why are the clinical words safe while the everyday words trigger the amygdala?
To understand the origin of that specific divide, we have to look at the intersection of linguistics and extreme class warfare.
Ooh.
The English profanity landscape that we navigate today was largely forged in the year 1066.
1066, during the Norman Conquest.
Yes,
The invasion that completely rewired the English language?
completely rewired it. So the French-speaking Norman aristocracy crossed the English Channel,
Yeah.
they defeated the Anglo-Saxons, and they established themselves as the new ruling class of England.
Right.
And the conquered Anglo-Saxons spoke Old English, which was a deeply Germanic language.
Hmm.
Now, when you have a violent conquest of this magnitude, the social structure of the society is instantly bifurcated,
Yeah.
and the language fractures right along with it.
We really have to visualize this linguistic divide for a second. You have the ruling elite, right? The new royalty, the aristocracy, the judges running the courts, the doctors practicing early medicine, the clergy running the powerful churches.
The people in charge.
Exactly. They are conducting all the high-level business of power, law, and theology in Norman French and Latin.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you have the conquered population. The farmers, the laborers, the blacksmiths, the peasantry.
The commoners.
They are entirely cut off from that power structure.
Yeah.
And they are still speaking their native Old English out in the fields.
And this severe social division rapidly solidified into a linguistic hierarchy. The Norman elite viewed the conquered Anglo-Saxons as uneducated, coarse, and inferior.
And consequently, the language was viewed as coarse and inferior.
Exactly. Over the centuries, as the two languages slowly merged to form Middle English, a permanent double vocabulary was established. The words considered polite, formal, and acceptable for public discourse were overwhelmingly the Latin and French derivatives used by the conquerors.
Right.
And the words considered crude, vulgar, and inappropriate for polite society were the Germanic Old English words used by the peasantry.
Let's actually look at the modern legacy of this, because it is literally hiding in plain sight in every doctor's office today.
It really is.
Think about the polite words you're expected to use when discussing bodily functions with a medical professional. You say intercourse or copulate. You say defecate or urinate. You say perspire.
All very clinical.
Every single one of those terms is a French or Latin derivative. They sound clean and professional to our modern ears solely because they were historically associated with the educated elite.
And what were the Anglo-Saxon farmers saying?
Right.
They were using the exact Germanic root words that currently make up the core of our unprintable vocabulary, the standard four-letter words for those exact same functions.
But they weren't considered swear words back then, were they?
No. Those words were not inherently dirtier or more transgressive in 1065. They were simply the everyday descriptors of the working class. But after the conquest, using those words signaled a lack of education and a low social status.
It is genuinely wild to realize that our modern concept of unprofessional behavior, like the exact criteria that determines what gets a modern employee sent to human resources today, is essentially an ancient hangover of French aristocrats looking down on English farmers.
It perfectly illustrates how power dictates propriety.
The class politics of medieval Europe are literally embedded into the modern corporate handbook.
They are. The vocabulary deemed acceptable for public educated discourse is invariably the vocabulary of the powerful. And the vocabulary that is stigmatized, censored, and suppressed is the vocabulary of the powerless.
Okay, since we are dissecting the history of these Germano peasant words, we absolutely have to talk about the absolute heavy hitter,
The big one.
the apex predator of English profanity, the F word. There is an enormous amount of mythology surrounding this specific word, and we really need to definitively clear the record for anyone listening.
We do. The folk etymologies surrounding this word are incredibly persistent.
Yeah.
And it's largely because people desperately want swear words to have a clever bureaucratic origin story, but they are entirely false.
Yeah, if you have ever received an old email forward or sat next to someone spouting trivia at a bar, you have undoubtedly heard that the F word is an acronym.
Oh, yes.
The most famous myths claim it stands for fornication under consent of the king, supposedly like a sign placed on doors during times of plague when population growth was mandated. Or the other popular myth is that it stands for unlawful carnal knowledge, supposedly a shorthand written on the stockades of criminals. It paints this vivid picture of medieval clerks stamping official acronyms onto parchment.
It is a vivid picture, but linguistic history completely rejects it.
Completely.
Using acronyms as a method of word formation is a distinctly modern phenomenon in the English language.
Really?
Yeah. Aside from a few specialized Latin abbreviations used by monks, acronyms practically did not exist in everyday English until the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They primarily rose to prominence during the World Wars and the expansion of modern government agencies.
Oh, interesting.
So medieval clerk was absolutely not creating four-letter acronyms for public consumption.
So if it didn't come from a royal decree, where did it actually originate?
Its true origin is much more organic, though slightly obscured by time. Linguists trace it back to complex Dutch or broader Germanic roots.
Right.
There are similar historical words in those languages, like the Dutch word foken or the Norwegian fuka, which meant to strike, to move back and forth rapidly, or to breed animals.
Right.
It begins appearing in written English records around the early 16th century, often in margins or coded text. And what is particularly notable is that from its very earliest recorded appearances, the surrounding context strongly indicates it was already considered a severe, highly taboo utterance.
But what makes this word a genuine marvel, and I mean that from a purely structural linguistic standpoint, is its unparalleled grammatical versatility.
Oh, unmatched.
There's arguably no other word in the English language that can shapeshift the way this one does. You can use it as a noun, a transitive verb, an intransitive verb, an adjective, an adverb, and an interjection.
It fits anywhere.
You can embed it directly into the middle of another word, like abs-frickin-lutely, which linguists call lusus. You can construct an entire coherent sentence using almost nothing but variations of this single word, and a native English speaker will perfectly understand your emotional intent. How does a word achieve that level of flexibility?
It achieves that flexibility through a process linguists call semantic bleaching.
Semantic bleaching, let's unpack that. What happens to the word during that process?
Semantic bleaching occurs when a word is overused so intensely and applied to so many wildly different contexts that it is slowly drained or bleached of its original specific literal meaning.
Oh, okay.
Originally, this word referred exclusively to a specific physical act of intimacy. But over centuries of heavy use, speakers began applying it to situations that had absolutely nothing to do with that physical act.
They started using it to express anger or surprise or pain.
Exactly. And as the usage broadened, the literal meaning faded. It no longer primarily refers to the physical act. Instead, its meaning has become completely diffuse. It is transformed from a literal descriptor into a pure linguistic intensifier.
I like to think of it like a brightly colored marker.
Okay, tell me more.
Imagine you have a brand new bright red marker, and you use it to underline the most important sentences on a whiteboard. It leaves a vivid red mark. That is the word in its original literal form.
Right.
But you use this marker constantly. You underline thousands of things. Eventually, the marker completely runs out of red ink. It is totally dry.
The ink is bleached out.
Exactly. But you still hold the plastic casing in your hand, and when you get angry or excited during a presentation, you take that dry marker and you aggressively tap it against the whiteboard. Tap, tap, tap.
Why?
You're pressing it into the board, not to leave a color. The ink is gone, but the physical force of the tap communicates your intensity. The marker has been bleached of its ink, just as the word has been bleached of its literal definition. It now functions solely as a physical pointer to emphasize your emotional tone.
That captures the mechanics of semantic bleaching perfectly. The word functions as an emotional tone marker.
Right.
Because the literal meaning is bleached away, you can use it to express blinding, aggressive rage, profound shock, immense joy, crushing frustration, or even deep, awestruck admiration.
That's freaking awesome. Right.
Exactly. The exact same acoustic vibration accomplishes all of those completely contradictory emotions. The listener determines the meaning entirely through the speaker's tone, volume, and context.
So English built this incredibly versatile foundation of profanity based on class divides and intense semantic bleaching. But this leads to a broader, global question.
Let's hear it.
If swearing is entirely based on societal taboos, what are the actual concepts that human beings refuse to talk about politely? Are these hang-ups universal? Does a farmer in 16th century England fear the same concepts as a merchant in modern Tokyo?
This is where we transition from history to cultural anthropology.
Okay.
When linguists map out profanity across global cultures, they find that while the specific words change, the domains of taboo generally cluster into distinct categories. In English, we can broadly identify 5 core pillars of profanity.
5 pillars.
Yes. These represent the specific anxieties our society has historically struggled to contain.
Let's trace the evolution of these anxieties. What is the historical foundation? Which pillar is the oldest?
The oldest and historically most perilous category is religious profanity.
Religion.
Yes. These are words that invoke sacred entities, divine punishment, or holy concepts. Words like God, Jesus, hell, or damnation outside of a strictly reverent theological context.
Which, to a modern listener, probably feels like the weakest category.
Today, it is relatively mild.
Yeah, someone yelling, "damn," in traffic today barely registers. It certainly doesn't trigger a massive amygdala response.
But we have to contextualize this.
Yep.
In medieval and early modern societies, religion was not a private weekend activity. It was the total, absolute organizing framework of human existence.
Right.
God was an omnipresent, literal reality invested with terrifying, immediate authority over the weather, the harvest, and human health. To invoke the divine casually to commit blasphemy was not just a breach of manners, it was perceived as a literal, existential danger to the entire community.
Because if you anger the divine, you might bring a drought or a plague down on the entire village.
Precisely. You were jeopardizing the survival of the community. Because the stakes were viewed as a matter of life and death, the taboos were enforced with lethal severity. In many historical jurisdictions, blasphemy was a capital offense punishable by execution.
Wow.
So the emotional payload of a religious swear word in 1400 was massive, because the fear of divine retribution was absolute.
But as society secularized, that fear receded.
Yeah.
So what filled the vacuum? What became the new dominant taboos?
As the religious framework loosened, the focus shifted inward toward the human body. This gives us the next 2 major categories: sexual profanity and excretory profanity.
Sex in the bathroom.
Exactly. Sexual profanity involving words for intimate acts and anatomy became highly prominent in Western society, largely driven by Victorian-era moral policing and the desire to tightly regulate human behavior and desire.
And the excretory category where it's for bodily waste is fascinating to me because it seems to transcend Western culture entirely. Like, why is bathroom stuff taboo everywhere?
Excretory profanity is arguably the most universal category across all documented human languages. Anthropologists attribute this to a deeply ingrained evolutionary defense mechanism, often called the hygiene hypothesis.
The hygiene hypothesis.
Yes. Long before humans understood germ theory, microbiology, or epidemiology, early societies empirically recognized that proximity to bodily waste correlated with sickness, infection, and death.
They didn't know what bacteria was, but they knew the smell meant danger.
Exactly. To protect the tribe from disease, cultures universally developed strict behavioral protocols regarding sanitation. And wherever a culture builds a strict behavioral protocol, it inevitably builds a linguistic fence to enforce it.
That makes total sense.
The concepts of waste and contamination became inherently disgusting and shameful, and the words describing them absorbed that deep, primal fear of disease.
So we have religion, sex, and hygiene. What about taboos regarding social relationships?
That leads to the fourth category,
Mhm.
ancestral or familial profanity, specifically maternal insults. This is another domain that seamlessly crosses cultural and linguistic boundaries. In many languages, particularly across Latin America, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, insults directed at a person's mother constitute the absolute highest, most severe tier of profanity,
Even outranking religion.
often outweighing sexual or religious terms entirely.
Which makes perfect psychological sense. Because if you insult me directly, you are just attacking an individual. But if you insult my mother, you are attacking my origin.
Yes.
You are attacking my family honor, my lineage, and my very identity within the community.
You are destabilizing their social foundation.
Right.
And finally, the fifth category, which has undergone a radical transformation in the last few decades, is slur-based profanity.
Slurs.
Yes, these are words that specifically target, demean, or dehumanize individuals based on their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, or physical ability.
We are going to explore the rise of the slur in detail shortly because it really represents a massive shift in modern values. But before we do, I want to look outside the standard English framework for a second.
Okay.
We know English obsesses over sex and excretion. Do other cultures have completely alien categories of taboo that reveal different historical fears?
They absolutely do. And studying linguistic anomalies offers incredible insight into the very traumas of different societies.
Traumas.
Yes, because the categories a culture elevates to its highest level of profanity act as a perfect mirror reflecting what that culture historically feared the most. Two examples illustrate this brilliantly.
Now let's hear them.
The first is the Dutch language.
Okay, if they aren't yelling about bodily functions, what are the Dutch swearing about?
The Dutch heavily utilize medical diseases.
Wait, really? Diseases?
Yes. In the Netherlands, invoking specific fatal illnesses carries the incredible, severe taboo weight that the strongest sexual profanities carry in the United States.
That's fascinating.
Wishing a severe disease upon someone, or combining the name of a disease with a noun, is considered incredibly aggressive and offensive.
So while an American might use the F word to express extreme anger at a bad driver, a Dutch speaker might hurl the name of a terminal illness. Why diseases?
It points directly back to a specific cultural trauma. The Plague-era Netherlands.
Of course.
During specific periods in their history, catastrophic outbreaks of fatal disease, such as the bubonic plague and later cholera, absolutely devastated the population. In those tightly packed, low-lying cities, fatal illness was the ultimate inescapable terror.
So the fear was just overwhelming.
The fear of disease was so absolute and so traumatizing that the very names of the diseases became culturally radioactive. This societal trauma crystallized into their modern profanity.
It's like an archaeological dig. You can literally hear the ghosts of the plague in their modern street slang.
The perfect way to phrase it.
What is the second anomaly?
The second anomaly is found in Quebec, Canada. Standard European French generally follows the standard European pattern heavy on sexual and excretory profanity, very similar to English. But in the Canadian province of Quebec, they developed an entirely unique lexicon of profanity, known as sakers, which is based almost exclusively on Catholic religious objects.
Not theological concepts like hell or damnation, but the actual physical objects inside the church building.
Precisely. Their strongest expletives are words like tabarnak, referring to the tabernacle, the ornate box holding the communion bread; chalice, referring to the chalice holding the sacramental wine; ostie, referring to the communion host itself.
Wow.
These are the most sacred, revered physical instruments of Catholic worship. And in Quebec, French, stringing these specific nouns together creates the equivalent of the most profane, unprintable, aggressive sentence in English.
When you view this through the lens of power and societal fear, it makes total sense. You have a society where the Catholic Church wasn't just a place people went on Sunday mornings. For centuries in Quebec, the church held almost total, suffocating dominance over every aspect of daily life.
Total control.
They controlled the political landscape, the educational system, the hospitals, and the moral behavior of the citizens.
It was a deeply entrenched hegemony. And eventually, the ferocity of that dominance produced a linguistic rebellion. The citizens could not overthrow the church politically, so they were rebelling linguistically.
That's so cool.
They weaponized the very instruments of their oppression. They took the sacred objects that symbolized the church's absolute authority and dragged them into the mud, turning them into the filthiest, most aggressive words in their daily language.
A swear word is never just a swear word. It is a historical rebellion. It is a map of who held power and who suffered under it.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to a critical realization. If taboos are a perfect reflection of a society's deepest fears, and if a society's fears evolve over time, then the rules of swearing must be shifting right now, in real time, beneath our feet.
They are shifting dramatically. The hierarchy of swear words in contemporary English is undergoing a rapid evolution, and the most obvious indicator of this shift is the continuing weakening of the sacred category.
We touched on this with blasphemy.
Right.
As modern Western society has become increasingly secularized, the religious words have been completely hollowed out. Words like damn or hell survive in our vocabulary, but they are artifacts. The fear of divine retribution is no longer the central organizing principle of our culture, so those words simply do not trigger the amygdala the way they did in the 15th century.
They've lost their emotional payload.
But nature abhors a vacuum. And as religious profanity has weakened, another category has skyrocketed to the absolute apex of the severity hierarchy.
Yes, and this is arguably the most significant shift in modern linguistics. The rise of the slur, identity-based slurs, words that target racial minorities, the LGBTQ+ community, women, or individuals with disabilities are now consistently and overwhelmingly rated by English speakers as the most offensive, dangerous, and strictly taboo words in the entire language.
This represents a massive shift from even 50 years ago when sexual obscenities still dominated the top of the censorship lists.
A huge shift.
So what is the fundamental why behind this transition? Why did society decide that slurs belong at the very top of the pyramid?
It reflects a profound structural evolution in our social consensus regarding what constitutes actual harm. Historically, profanity was largely about violating decorum. It was about offending the theoretical majesty of God or offending the polite middle-class sensibilities of a dinner party by crassly bringing up bodily functions.
It was about breaking the rules of etiquette. It was a victimless crime against manners.
Exactly. But modern society has reached a new, vital consensus. We have collectively recognized that causing direct, targeted psychological harm to an individual specifically by attacking their inherent identity, signaling their membership in a marginalized group, and dehumanizing them is infinitely worse than merely violating the polite decorum of a sexual or excretory taboo.
That makes perfect sense. Shouting the F word in a crowded room offends the abstract concept of politeness. But directing a racial slur at someone inflicts targeted, measurable psychological violence on an actual human being.
Precisely. The cultural taboo has shifted from protecting powerful institutions like the church or the aristocracy's concept of manners to protecting vulnerable individuals from social and psychological harm. The words that cause the most individual harm are now correctly categorized as the most severe taboos.
The linguistic hierarchy shifts because our moral hierarchy shifts.
Right.
Now, while we are analyzing the complex rules of navigating these shifting taboos, I want to look at one of my absolute favorite linguistic quirks. It is a brilliant strategy humans developed centuries ago to try and have their cake and eat it too when dealing with dangerous words.
Ah, yes.
I am talking about the minced oath.
The minced oath is a delightful and highly revealing psychological phenomenon. It's a testament to human linguistic ingenuity.
If you are unfamiliar with the formal term, you are definitely familiar with the practice. A minced oath occurs when a speaker takes a harsh, heavily taboo swear word and intentionally tweaks the pronunciation just enough so that it sounds similar, but technically, legally, is not the taboo word. So instead of risking the wrath of God by saying damn, you soften it and say darn.
Exactly.
Instead of saying hell, you say heck. Instead of dropping the F word, you yell fudge or freakin'.
The historical lineage of the minced oath is incredibly rich, particularly in British English, which has a long, culturally ingrained tradition of circumlocution, which is the art of finding ways to say something intensely without directly saying it.
Oh, the British love circumlocution.
They do. Think of classic exclamations like crikey, which originated as a minced oath for Christ to avoid blasphemy charges.
Wow, crikey.
Blimey was originally the highly profane God blind me, and the wonderful archaic term gadzooks was actually a minced oath for God's hooks, a graphic reference to the nails used in the crucifixion.
Gadzooks. It sounds like a harmless cartoon catchphrase to us today, but in its original context, it was a clever, desperate linguistic dodge to avoid being thrown in a medieval prison for blasphemy. But what is the underlying psychology here? If you are angry enough to want to swear, but scared enough of the consequences to avoid the word, why not just stay silent? Why invent fudge?
Because of the immense emotional pressure building up in the brain that we discussed earlier.
Right.
In a moment of frustration, the amygdala is active. It wants to sound the alarm. It wants the physiological release that comes with breaking the taboo. Simply staying silent does not provide that release.
So the minced oath gives you an out?
The minced oath is a brilliant linguistic workaround. It allows the speaker to safely vent the emotional charge they get, to violently expel air and make the hard, aggressive consonant sounds that closely mimic the swear word, while simultaneously exploiting a technical loophole in societal etiquette.
It is like driving a car right to the absolute edge of a sheer cliff, looking over the side and slamming on the brakes at the last millisecond. You get the adrenaline thrill of the danger, but you don't plummet to your death. By shouting fudge, you clearly communicate to everyone in the room, I am experiencing a level of frustration that warrants a severe obscenity. But you keep your job and your social standing because, technically speaking, you only named a chocolate dessert.
It is a masterful negotiation of social rules. The listener perfectly decodes the hostile intent, but the speaker remains technically innocent of any infraction.
Speaking of social judgments regarding swearing, there is a massive, pervasive stereotype that gets thrown around constantly. We have all heard it from a teacher or a disapproving relative.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
The idea is that if a person relies on profanity, it proves they have a limited, impoverished vocabulary. The assumption is that they simply aren't intelligent enough to think of a better or more descriptive word. I want to definitively bust this myth because the linguistic data says the exact opposite, doesn't it?
It does. The low intelligence or poor vocabulary myth is a persistent classist assumption, but it is entirely unsupported by empirical linguistic data. In fact, multiple studies measuring verbal fluency have demonstrated a strong, positive correlation between possessing a large profanity vocabulary and possessing a large overall vocabulary.
Wait, really? So someone who can swear creatively actually knows more words overall than someone who never swears?
Yes. The data indicates that linguistic fluency is a generalized trait. People who possess extensive, rich, highly developed vocabularies, meaning they can easily recall complex adjectives, precise verbs, and nuanced nouns, also tend to possess extensive, rich profanity vocabulary.
They just have a bigger hard drive.
Exactly. They simply have more linguistic tools available in their mental toolbox across all categories of speech, both polite and taboo.
So when someone drops a perfectly timed, highly specific expletive in a moment of crisis, it doesn't mean they couldn't think of a better word.
Yeah.
It means their brain rapidly scanned a massive internal dictionary and actively selected that specific taboo tool because it was the most emotionally resonant, impactful choice for that exact millisecond. It is a demonstration of linguistic agility, not a lack of it.
Precisely. Knowing exactly which swear word to deploy, calibrating the tone perfectly, and understanding exactly when the social context allows for it requires a remarkably high degree of both linguistic and social intelligence.
Which perfectly transitions us to our final segment, the learner's guide to social survival. Because for anyone trying to navigate this landscape, whether you are a non-native English speaker learning the language or just someone starting a new job in a different city, navigating this invisible minefield of profanity is incredibly high stakes.
It really is.
How do you practically apply all this historical and neurological knowledge without ruining your life?
As we just established, swearing effectively is the ultimate test of social intelligence. It is entirely dependent on mastering context, register, and geography. You must learn to read the room flawlessly.
Reading the room.
And one of the most dangerous traps for English learners is failing to recognize the massive cultural divide between the United Kingdom and the United States regarding how profanity is deployed in professional and public spaces.
This is a huge, potentially career-ending trap. If you are learning English by watching British panel shows, consuming BBC comedies, or listening to UK-based media, you are going to absorb a profoundly skewed idea of what is considered acceptable in an American corporate environment.
Oh, absolutely. British media and British workplaces in general are vastly more tolerant of casual profanity than their American counterparts. In the UK, certain mid-level swear words are frequently used as mild intensifiers or cheeky punctuation.
Just casual banter.
Right. A word that might elicit a casual chuckle on a broadcast in London would trigger immediate FCC fines and public apologies on American television.
Wow.
More importantly, using that same cheeky word in a corporate meeting in Chicago or New York could result in a direct human resources violation and potential termination.
The British seem to have a different cultural register for it. They integrate it into daily banter as a form of social bonding, whereas American corporate culture retains a much more puritanical, rigidly policed approach to professional language. So the learner must understand that memorizing the dictionary definition of the word is practically useless. You must intimately understand the geographic and cultural air you are breathing.
Context is everything.
Yeah.
However, there is one critical area where context does not offer any loopholes.
Yes.
And we must issue a definitive, unequivocal cautionary note for our listeners, particularly those acquiring English as a second language.
Yes.
And that regards the use of slurs.
This is vital. A slur is categorically different from misjudging the room and dropping an F-bomb during a PowerPoint presentation.
It is entirely different. A common, tragic mistake occurs when a learner hears a racial, homophobic, or misogynistic slur in a popular rap song or in a gritty, realistic film.
Right.
Because they hear it in media, they incorrectly assume it is simply another edgy slang term, a slightly spicier version of standard profanity that they can use to sound tough, authentic, or fluent.
But they don't realize what they are holding in their hands.
They do not realize the weapon they are wielding. As we discussed when covering the shift in modern taboos, these words sit at the absolute, untouchable apex of the contemporary hierarchy because they're designed to inflict deep historical harm.
Harm to someone's identity.
Yes, using a slur without intimately understanding its violent historical context, the centuries of oppression behind it, and the strict in-group and out-group rules governing its reclamation will cause catastrophic social damage.
It's just not worth the risk.
No. It will not be perceived by native speakers as a mere lapse in politeness or a quirky vocabulary mistake. It will be perceived as a direct, aggressive attack on a person's humanity. For anyone navigating the language, these specific words must be treated as radioactive. They do not function like regular profanity, and they cannot be used playfully by outsiders.
It is the difference between accidentally dropping a plate at a dinner party and intentionally setting the host's house on fire. Just do not touch them.
Perfectly said.
But as we wrap up this massive exploration, I want to end on a positive sociological note. We have spent an hour discussing the dangers of swearing, the historical oppression, the amygdala threat responses, and the HR violations. But when used correctly in the exact right context with the exact right people, swearing actually serves a profoundly beautiful, cohesive social function.
You are referring to the solidarity effect, yes?
Yes.
It is a deeply documented, powerful sociological phenomenon that relies heavily on everything we've discussed today.
Break this down for us. If swearing triggers a biological threat response, how can it possibly serve to bring human beings closer together? Wouldn't dropping taboo words create a hostile, tense environment?
It creates tension if used aggressively against someone. But research on workplace group dynamics and social psychology has consistently shown that moderate, well-timed, mutually agreeable swearing among colleagues or friends actually serves to significantly increase mutual trust, group cohesion, and perceived authenticity.
Okay, think about the mechanics of a normal workday. When you are at the office, you are wearing a heavy professional mask. You are carefully selecting the polite Latin and French vocabulary we inherited from the Normans.
Yes, very guarded.
You are formal, polished, guarded, and suppressing your genuine emotions to maintain decorum. You are putting up a wall. But then you and a coworker are stuck late on a Friday dealing with a broken piece of equipment or an impossible client deadline. The frustration peaks, and one of you drops a mild, perfectly placed, historically taboo swear word.
In that specific shared moment, dropping that word sends a powerful, invisible signal to the other person. You are effectively communicating, I am comfortable enough with you to drop the polite aristocratic act. I trust you enough to safely violate the formal, restrictive rules of this space, knowing you will not report me or judge me.
It is an act of deep vulnerability.
Yeah.
You are showing them the unpolished, raw, Anglo-Saxon reality of your human frustration. And that shared vulnerability creates an immediate bond.
It really does.
It proves you are both in the trenches together, experiencing the exact same reality. The person who can swear comfortably and accurately read the room to know it is safe to do so is signaling immense authenticity. They are proving they are a real human being, not just a corporate drone.
It demonstrates a supreme mastery of social rules. You understand the intricate boundaries of polite society so thoroughly that you know exactly when it is safe to break them, how far you can bend them, and precisely with whom you can share that transgression. It is the ultimate linguistic handshake.
Which brings this entire incredible journey full circle. Swear words are clearly not just instances of bad manners. They are not the crutches of a poor vocabulary. They are, in fact, a deeply complex, beautifully intricate intersection of human biology, ancient history, and modern sociology.
Absolutely.
They are neurological painkillers that literally pump adrenaline into our bloodstream to help us survive. They are the living, spoken relics of medieval class warfare, echoing the divide between Norman kings and Anglo-Saxon peasants.
Time capsules.
They are cultural time capsules that reveal the deepest traumas of the societies that spoke them, from the plague-ridden streets of the Netherlands to the theocratic dominance of colonial Quebec. And perhaps most importantly, they are the vital shifting markers of our evolving social values, transforming in real time from tools that protected polite decorum into boundaries that protect vulnerable human identities.
For everyone listening, we hope you walk away from this deep dive equipped with a profound new toolkit for navigating and observing your own daily language.
Start paying attention.
Yes. Start paying attention to the subtle, changing hierarchy of words in your own life, within your own workplace, and among your own family. Notice how your own brain physically reacts differently when you consciously choose to use a clinical, Latin-based term versus when you let slip its coarse, Anglo-Saxon cousin.
It's all connected.
Language is not a static list of definitions. It is a living, breathing organism, and the taboo, forbidden edges of that organism are exactly where the most fascinating, revealing growth always occurs.
So true. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. If our swear words are a perfect, unbroken mirror, reflecting exactly what our society fears and values most right now, what do you think the ultimate unspeakable swear words will look like 100 years from now, when our current fears are completely obsolete?
Will the ultimate taboos of the 22nd century revolve around artificial intelligence? Will they be rooted in environmental collapse? Or perhaps genetic engineering and biological modification?
Whatever those future taboos turn out to be, I can guarantee you one thing. The human brain will still be using them to smash that emergency glass. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.